Welcome, everybody. My name is Pastor Sean. I'm in charge of staff wellness and development here at Living Word Christian Center. I just want to take a moment to welcome our online viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight. One of the things that I want to kind of eradicate this year is always saying how busy I am whenever I talk to somebody. Does anybody else do this? You go, hey, how you doing? You go, great, so busy. So busy, like it's a badge of honor, right? I'm trying to break that as a habit because we're all busy. I'm not special because I'm busy and probably shouldn't be as busy as I am all the time, so I shouldn't be bragging about it either. So I'm just allowing you to keep me accountable to that in a couple weeks. If I forget about this and I tell you how busy I am, just make me feel really bad about that. The thing about mental health is everybody has it, right? Because everybody has a brain. Whether we're in a healthy place or an unhealthy place, it's not like this static place that we stay in at all times. And it's not like we do, something and then all of a sudden we go to this healthy place and then we just stay there permanently. There's a continuum of mental health. And just like finances, just like our relationships, just like our physical health, if we don't tend to it, it tends to go away. Right? If we don't manage our finances, we go broke. If we don't take care of our physical health, we get out of shape. If we don't take care of our relational health, some of those relationships cease to exist. So when we talk about managing good mental health, it's really about understanding where are we at in that continuum. So here's where I'm at when I'm doing my absolute best. And then I've got a pretty vivid frame of reference for where I'm at when I'm doing my absolute worst. And for me, that's underneath a bridge doing drugs, if you've heard my testimony. So as I've engaged on my own journey of getting healthy, the goal is to develop self-awareness, to start bringing those margins in a little bit, right? So I want to know when I'm starting to move out of kind of my healthy place, and I want to be able to catch it before it starts to have really serious implications for my life. In order to do that, we have to develop good self-awareness. And part of that is understanding what are our red flags. So I know that when I am getting stressed, and not the good kind of stress, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but the kind of stress that feels toxic, the kind of stress that you just want to lay on the floor and go to sleep for a week or two, right? The kind of stress that makes you judgmental, and maybe nobody else in here experiences this. This might just be me. Where you start to get judgmental and cynical. You start to really get critical of people. Some of those are my red flags. And, thankfully, I've done enough work over the years where it usually doesn't come out. I say usually. My wife is here, so I have to be honest. Sometimes it comes out, right? I usually can catch it inside of my head. But I was noticing the kind of stress that I was experiencing was more of this kind of anxious, kind of toxic stress. The thing is that our emotions aren't good or bad. They're just telling us something. I've shared this before. I share this quite often. There is such a thing as good stress. Stress can propel us and compel us to do things outside of our comfort zone. Everything that I have in my life that has value was outside of my comfort zone at some point. It stretched me. I had to push through it. It's great when it helps us deliver on a deadline or complete a task we didn't think we were capable of doing. That builds resiliency. It builds self-esteem. It builds confidence, all of those types of things. But then there's that chronic, kind of really toxic, gross feeling stress. And that was some of the stress that I was starting to notice. And I had to ask myself, where are my margins? So tonight's message is called, What's Your Margins? We're going to take a look at Psalms 46, 1 through 10 as our core scripture. I have preached Psalms 46:10 before, which is what everybody knows to be still and know that I am God. I've never preached it in context, which I'm excited to be able to do tonight. So if we look at verse 1, it says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change and though the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake at its swelling pride, Selah. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling place of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations made an uproar, the kingdoms tottered. He raised his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Selah. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has wrought desolations in the earth. He makes wars to cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear into two. He burns the chariots with fire. Cease striving and know that I am God. I will be exalted amongst the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Selah. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Verse 10 tells us to stop striving. I like this translation. It's the New American Standard Bible. And we usually hear, be still and know that I am God. But this is very specific. It says, cease striving and know that I am God. See, a lot of the times when I'm feeling that stress, it's not about what I'm doing. I am somebody who is very driven. I am somebody that likes to have a full life. That does not equate to being unhealthy, as long as I'm managing it well. What's problematic for me is when I can't find stillness here and I can't find stillness here. A lot of people think that burnout comes from workload. It doesn't. It comes from emotional troubles. It comes from getting stuck in other people's problems. It comes from not being able to be still and rejuvenate. I was doing all the things. My wife and I both run really full lives. Our lives are uniquely built to be able to do that. And we focus on things that we call resiliency factors. So these are things that help us run at a faster pace. And we were doing all the things. I was engaging in my physical activity. I love going to the gym. I'm not going to go here tonight, but I will tell you this. If everybody took physical fitness and health seriously, 60% of all mental health in the United States would go away. When I'm in the gym and I'm going hard and I'm pushing my body, I don't have the capacity to think about what's going on in 2 hours. I don't have the capacity to dwell on the past. I'm very much grounded in the present and the here and now during those activities. And it's also releasing chemicals in my brain. A half hour of physical exercise is equivalent to taking a dose of Prozac. We know that. So we were doing well with that. We were doing well with our eating most of the time. I blame my wife for the times that we weren't doing well. Getting good sleep, mostly. We have 2 very, very lovely dogs. And I don't know exactly what the psychology behind this is, but when we go to sleep, we all have appropriate boundaries and space in the bed. And then I wake up and I feel very specific 4 pressure points. There's 2 feet behind this part of my back, 2 feet on this part of my lower back, 2 feet right here, and then 2 feet right here as they're both kind of like tucked up underneath me. When I wake up, I'm a little bit foggy, and I actually think it's like my wife being sweet, and then I roll over, and I realize it's my dog spooning me. And this level of disappointment starts to set in. And then my dog, Jax, he's like actually laying on my pillow. And he's like in the middle. And he'll kind of wake up when I look over. And he literally will be like, what? And I just roll over. And I have at times thought about trying to enforce not sleeping with the dogs. But I am fully aware that that means I will be sleeping on the couch. So I choose not to take that route. So for the most part, we get good sleep. I have some great extracurricular hobbies. I love playing pickleball. Love playing pickleball. Are you a pickleball fan? I love it. So, I have a competitive aspect to my personality. I've come to accept this. This is not something that I'm going to change. It is something that I need to control. There's no place for competition when it comes to leadership. There's no place for competition in relationships. There's no place for competition within ministry. But I do feel like pickleball is the one place where God has given me permission to annihilate anybody who tries to challenge me on the court, and I feel pretty good about it. So I've been playing a lot of pickleball and staying up on that as well. And quality time with my family, with my wife, with my friends. But I was still really stressed. And these are usually things that keep me going and keep me rejuvenated. I have the privilege of leading our associate team. And our associate team is, it's really our developmental program for senior leadership to move into more executive positions within the church. And so it's been an honor of mine to be able to step in and help support that program. And we're reading a book by Carey Nieuwhof called Didn't See It Coming. And there was a chapter on disconnection. And just briefly, he starts to talk about cell phones. And he starts to talk about screen times and technology. And it was like this explosion kind of went off, and I was like, I haven't looked at this for a while. And one of the reasons why I don't take a serious look at that is because I really don't do social media. I don't love social media, but the truth is I'm just old and I don't really want to get on it and have the responsibility of responding to people. We did it for a little bit, and then we decided we were hey, we're going to take a break. And we took a break, but we didn't realize there was etiquette to taking a break from social media. There was rules that govern you taking a break from it. And we found this out because our family members were calling my parents and being are they mad at us? Why did they do this? And we were no, we just went off social media, but we didn't notify everybody. And so that was problematic. And after that, I kind of just said, yeah, I'm probably just going to be done with that. So I didn't have to do a lot of monitoring around that. But one thing that has come up for me recently is some new positions. So I also am over our care and counseling department. Something that comes along with leading departments is there is some administrative stuff that goes along with it. I'm not great at that, I'll be honest. It's not my strength. It's not that I can't learn that stuff. I've just never had to do it in the past, and it's certainly not what I feel like I'm supposed to be. That's not my primary focus and my call, but I still need to be good with communication. It's one of the few things on my end year reviews that comes up, and it's communication's good, could respond to emails quicker, those kind of things. So it's been something that I've been trying to focus on, but there are times where I run really long days, and I get 5 minutes maybe in between sessions, and I might have 10 sessions in a day. And I would love to tell you, on those breaks, I actually go back into my office and I get on my knees and I'm super spiritual and I ask God to replenish me. I don't do that. What I do is I go onto YouTube and I watch Fail Army, and I watch 12-year-olds try to take ramps, and when they crash into the dirt mountains, I don't know why that brings me so much joy, but it does. And I know it's not right, but it makes me laugh and it rejuvenates me, and I'm ready to go into my next session. So that means I'm not always going to be responding to the emails and those kind of things. So then I end up doing it at nighttime when I get home, or I do it in the morning. And I also realize that while I don't have social media, I have started getting into YouTube Shorts. Yeah, so endless workout videos, pickleball videos, and I find myself in the thing that I end up counseling people about all the time, where it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes has gone by, and I'm I don't even want to be looking at this. Why am I still looking at this? Did anybody else in the room go through this? Okay, thank you. Why am I still looking at this? It's a problem. To understand the impact that the screens are having on my ability to be still, we have to know a little bit about the brain. And this is where I get to nerd out. You guys ready? So there are different brain frequencies. There's different brain waves. 5 specific ones. The first one is an alpha brainwave, and the frequencies go at different speeds. So that's how they can see them when looking at neuroimaging. The first brainwave is alpha, which is responsible for states of relaxation and calm. That's where most of us want to be, right? That's where God calls us to be. The second brainwave is a beta brainwave. And a beta brainwave is responsible for hyperarousal, activity, anxiousness. It's high alert, kind of always looking around. The third one is delta. Delta brainwaves are deep states of sleep, REM sleep. Now, REM sleep is important for a couple reasons. Your brain needs to rejuvenate every single night, and it's doing amazing work while you're sleeping. Your brain, so the average person experiences about 60 to 80,000 thoughts throughout the course of the day. At the end of the night, your brain has to decide, what do I need to keep? What do I need to get rid of? What do I need to leave on the desk for tomorrow, right? So it's trying to dump information. The first half of the night, when you go into REM sleep, your brain focuses on rejuvenating your body, doing amazing things with cellular regeneration. This is why you're lighter in the morning when you wake up. This is why, your heart rate can go up sometimes at night. So your body is doing a lot of great things. It's burning calories. The second half of the night, your brain is focused on rejuvenating your mental health. Now, because some of the experiences that you've had either that day or some of the experiences that you perhaps have had in the past are very troubling experiences, it knows that if it connects emotional reactivity to the memory processing, it's never going to get through it. So when the right and the left brain are communicating back and forth, what it does is it neutralizes the limbic system, which is responsible for fight or flight. So you can actually process all of the information without experiencing emotional distress. This is why REM sleep is so important. You could sleep 8 to 10 hours, and if you didn't actually go into REM sleep, you're going to still wake up feeling absolutely exhausted. This is also why if you perhaps wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you feel kind of that panic feeling, it's because your consciousness came online and the limbic system kicked in and started flooding your body with stress hormones because of whatever you were thinking about. So your brain is doing amazing things while you sleep, and those are delta brain waves. Gamma brain waves are when we are focused on intense learning, we're engaging that prefrontal cortex, decision making, using logic. And this one I love. The last one is theta brain waves. And theta brain waves happen only when we are in deep states of prayer and meditation. There's an internal focus, and it's a part of your brain that you can access only when in those states. So, how does cell phone screen time and social media impact these functions of the brain? Social media platforms hire people called attention engineers. And their job is to keep you on the platforms as long as they possibly can. And in order to do this, they have to understand a little bit about the brain and how that works. Everybody here heard of dopamine? Okay, so dopamine is the chemical that's released when you experience something that's pleasurable. Now, this is actually connected to a survival instinct, and the reason why we experience that pleasure is so that we go back to that event again and again. So you can experience this when having food, you can experience this in romantic relationships, you can experience this when you feel sheltered, when you feel loved, when you feel cared for. We used to think that dopamine, actually, we got the most release after the experience of whatever it was that was pleasurable. We now know that you're getting the biggest release in the anticipation of it. So it's in the pursuit of what we're doing, okay? And that's because we're hardwired for struggle. We're hardwired to push on, to progress, to get better, to grow, to strive. So we get that burst of dopamine, and then a chemical called glutamate, which is responsible for memory, locks it in place, and it goes, hey, go back to that. That was a good experience. So they knew that they needed to be able to manipulate this system in the brain, and that's where they came up with the infinite scrolling and those types of things. It turns out that this was already being used, and it was called slot machine psychology. Slot machine psychology is what all of our current scrolling technology comes from, whether it's social media, whether it's a dating site, whether it's pornography. It's what's the next image, what's the next story, what's the next joke, those kind of things. And just like when you're sitting at a slot machine, after you've invested so much time and money, you're sitting there pulling, going, what's the next wheel? What's the next reel? And you go, hey, if I get up and walk away and somebody else were to walk up and sit down and actually hit the jackpot, how would I feel about that? I might as well just get the rest of my paycheck out of the way and see if we can win, right? So it's this fear of missing out. And so it keeps you engaged on these sites for extended periods of time, and that was the point. They also know they've taken a wrong turn. There's a show on Netflix. I'm going to get in so much trouble if there's something inappropriate in it. I don't think there is. It's an educational documentary. It's called The Social Dilemma. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch it. It's the people who actually invented the technology in Silicon Valley saying, we made a mistake, and here's why. So if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to check that out. When we engage with these platforms for long periods of time, we see these spikes of dopamine that happen like this, and eventually, because dopamine is not infinite, it starts to cycle down. And then sooner or later, we're not even getting back to baseline anymore. This is when you feel that, why am I still doing this? I'm tired, I want to go to bed, and I keep scrolling, and I'm not getting any release of dopamine anymore from it. That's what's happening. It's called dopamine depletion. It can lead to states of depression and heightened states of anxiety. Excessive stimulation of beta brain waves negatively impacts your ability to relax, concentrate, contributes to mental fatigue, brain fog, and anxiety. How many people go to social media when they're trying to unwind? This is suggesting that that may not be the best approach. I'm going to share some sad statistics with you. In the US, 30% of all girls aged 12 to 18 meet diagnostic criteria for an anxiety disorder. That is up exponentially from 15 years ago. These studies actually indicate that they know it. They asked, and so some of the recommendations now coming out around this technology are kids under the age of 16 shouldn't have smartphones, and people under the age of 17 shouldn't be engaging in social media at all. And so when they asked these girls, they said, hey, do you think it's good for you to have social media? There was one variable that every single one of them said, well, that depends. Would everybody else have access to it? See, if everybody else has access to it, then I want to have access to it. But if nobody else is going to use it, then I shouldn't be using it either because it doesn't really help me and I feel really bad. See, it's become so intertwined with socialization, which is really important to teenagers, that they can't separate that because it's unhealthy for them. So this presents a problem for parents. It presents a problem for kids that want to take the step of detoxing from some of these things. But we're learning now that it has to be a communal effort, right? So we are seeing some schools that are going to no cell phone policies. We're seeing younger groups of kids that are coming together and saying, hey, let's go to flip phones, those types of things. It hinders brain development in the area of self-control and self-regulation. If you're over the age of 30 and you have social media, YouTube Shorts, I got to actually join the ranks now. Think about how hard it is for you to sometimes get off of it. Now think about a teenager who is in the earliest phases of brain development around self-control and self-regulation. It's actually impacting how the brain develops and their ability to say no to things when they know it's not good for them. It increases meanness amongst kids. One of the things that keeps us being kind to one another is empathy, which happens through mirror neurons. If I say something kind to you, I get to see in your face that that was meaningful for you. If I say something mean to you, I also have to look into your eyes and I have to see the pain that I've created. That's a deterring factor for me losing control of my anger and just saying something because I want to just release whatever frustrations I'm feeling. With the social media, there isn't that factor. They can just type it in, and that's why we see the cruelty going up when it comes to the bullying and those types of things. It negatively impacts self-esteem. We're seeing suicidal tendencies on the rise for teenage girls especially, but also for teenage boys. Ask yourself, after you get off of social media for a half hour, do you feel better about your house or worse? Do you feel better about the vacation you took last week or worse? Do you find gratitude for the car that you own? Or the just okay Thanksgiving that we had when we look at the person with the table and it's perfectly set and it's got every trimming that you've ever wanted and everybody's sitting around laughing. That house, I promise you, is a mess. Everybody got together for a quick selfie. They took the picture, they posted it, and then they went back to fighting and their dysfunction. But we buy into it and we go, hey, I want that. This is the big one. Excessive beta stimulation severely inhibits and sometimes blocks altogether our ability to enter theta states, which are the deep states of meditation and prayer. You ever just feel like you can't connect? You're reading scripture, you're trying to pray, you just don't feel it? It might be because of this. It might be fundamentally the brain has been rewired so that it can't enter these deep states. We're going to go back to Psalms 46, 1 through 11. And I want to give you just a little bit of context. And you know, I almost titled this sermon, The Descendants of Korah and Social Media. I thought that was going to be really great clickbait, but then I'm like, I'm talking about social media. I probably shouldn't be thinking about clickbait to get people to engage with the sermon. Psalms 46 was one of the hymns, or one of the psalms that was turned into a hymn. It was a song, it was beautiful. It was written by the descendants of Korah. Those were temple assistants, so they served in the temple. A lot of people think that it's just a song and they're like, it's not necessarily connected to anything specific or real, but that's actually not true. It was connected to an actual event in Jewish history. That particular psalm takes place in 2 Kings 18 through 20. It was about King Hezekiah. He was a descendant of King David. King David is a descendant of Jesus Christ. In the book of Genesis, God says that the scepter shall not pass from the tribe of Judah. So it's really important that they establish the lineage all the way back from Adam and Eve, all the way up to Jesus. I love that the book of Ruth is just about her and Boaz being great-great-grandparents to King David. That's why the book of Ruth is in there, because it has to connect and complete the genealogy. So King Hezekiah was a righteous king. He was a God-fearing king. His father was not. His father was a wicked king. His son ended up being a wicked king. The Jewish people had a really interesting, colorful, and complex history with their relationship with God. More Jewish kings were not followers of Jehovah than were. But King Hezekiah was. And the first thing that he did when he took over power at the age of 25 was he got rid of all of the idols in Jerusalem. Got rid of all of them. Now, he is reigning in a very difficult time during the Jewish history. This is when they're a splintered nation. This is when they're losing territory. They're eventually going to be banished from the promised land. They were in great peril. In the psalm, what's happening is there is an Assyrian king by the name of Sennacherib. I actually looked that up. That's how to pronounce it, Sennacherib. He's surrounded Jerusalem, and he's about to invade. So the entire Assyrian army is around Jerusalem right now, and they're about to come in. King Hezekiah went to the temple to pray. He took the letter that the Assyrian king sent him saying, hey, we're never going to worship that God. We're coming in. We're going to kill you guys. He took the letter, and he prayed to God. he asked to be delivered. The next morning, God laid waste to 185,000 soldiers. And the ones that he didn't kill fled back to the city of Nineveh. The sons of Korah would have been witness to this, as they would have likely been in the temple witnessing this all take place. So now I want to go back through and I want to read through Psalms 46 once again with the context in mind. And we're just going to pay attention to the movement in the scripture. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. So the Assyrian army is around, and he's confessing who God is and the deliverance of that. Though the earth should change, and though the mountains slip into the hearts of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake at its swelling pride, Selah. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling place of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. He's talking about Jerusalem, right? God is in the midst of our city. She will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. So this is what it's talking about when it's saying God's going to take care of the armies that are surrounding it. The nations made an uproar, the kingdoms tottered, he raised his voice, the earth melted, the Lord of hosts is with us. There's a reassurance. God spoke to King Hezekiah in the temple, and he says, they're not going to enter Jerusalem. God tells him this. He goes, do not worry about it. I got your back. They're not coming in. I promise you. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Selah. Come behold the works of the Lord, who has wrought desolations in the earth. He makes wars to cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in two. He burns the chariots with fire. Cease striving and know that I am God. I will be exalted amongst the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Selah. Here's the movement in the text. There is a crisis. They're fearful of their lives. They're fearful of losing Jerusalem, their most prized city. Hezekiah starts by acknowledging who God is. That's faith. Faith is now hope for something that's coming in the future. So he's standing on it. He's going, I believe you're going to deliver me. He's confessing this. It hasn't yet happened yet, but he has the faith to believe that it's going to happen. He goes in to pray. He needed to be in those theta brainwaves. What do you think would have happened if King Hezekiah would have went to TikTok? Like, it's a long day at war. I'm really stressed out, right? Like, people have just been in my bubble all day. I'm going to go detox and decompress with some TikTok. Because here's the thing you have to understand. It was his call and response from prayer to the miracle of God working, which then led to the testimony of the entire world. The stillness in our hearts and in our minds, our ability to go into prayer, our ability to seek God. And I think there's some interesting parallels here because, see, King Hezekiah, he got rid of all the idols because everybody was worshiping things that weren't God to feel better. Fast forward to today. What things are we using to make ourselves feel better, to relax and unwind, decompress, that are keeping us from being able to go into deep states of connection with our Heavenly Father? So here's my question to you tonight as we're coming in for closing. The church has a long history, not our church, the church, has a long history of overcorrecting problems. I'm not suggesting we start a bonfire in the front lawn out here and everybody throws their cell phones in it. I'm not suggesting that. But I am asking you, take some inventory. Notice how much you're on there. If you have an Apple phone, go in and just check your screen time. It'll shock you. And then ask yourself, because a lot of us are like, I'm so busy, I have no time. And then you go on and you look at your screen time, and it's like you spent 26 hours over the course of 3 weeks on social media or screen time. Well, how much more time would we have for prayer or for going out to dinner with families or connecting with friends or talking to human beings on the phone or meeting them up in person? It's mindless time that just slips away from you. I'm not an anti-social media person. I want to be clear about that, okay? I am anti what they tend to do to us when we get addicted to them and we don't self-regulate and we don't self-monitor. So I'm asking you to ask yourself, do you need to detox? How about your kids? As a therapist, I work with parents, and sometimes I do, so that's one thing that I actually started doing now with almost every single client is I do an electronic assessment. And I just go, how much video games are we playing? Are we watching TV right before we go to bed? We do it. We were so good not to do that for a long time, weren't we, babe? But now it's like, yeah, we're watching it. We got to probably stop doing it. But here's the deal. When you're watching TV, it's stimulating your brain. That blue screen is telling your brain it's daytime, and you start to wake up and you become alert. You're putting yourself in those hyperactive states, which makes it very difficult to go into REM sleep at night. But I'll work with parents who are saying the kids won't listen, they're dysregulated, they're just out of control, and I'll say, how much video games are we playing? How much social media are we on? And the number is shocking, and then I say, okay, what we need to do is we need to do a detox, and I need to tell you something. Your children are going to turn into gremlins for 3 days. And we need to work through coping skills, and we need to put a support system in place for you and your spouse, because the kids will go crazy. It's like taking drugs away from somebody who's actively addicted to them. But without question, here's what happens. A lot of families will choose to do this in the summertime when they're going on vacation, those kind of things. Day 4, the kids start calming down. Day 5, they're outside playing with each other. Do you know that boredom is the gateway to creativity? We sometimes need to not have anything to do in order to get to that imagination that's been given to us by God, mind's eye, the ability to see in our minds what could be and then create, because we're created in His image and likeness, and we were designed to create. Sometimes we have to be bored before we can get there. The kids listen better. They don't talk back as much. They have this huge epiphany of how great this is. And then on the way home, they give them their cell phones back. And we start the process all over again. So my question to you is just to do an honest assessment. Where are you at with it? Where are you at with screen times? Where are you at with social media? Where are the kids at with it? And is there a call to action? Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to be going to something else before going to God, and we don't want to be doing anything that's actually preventing the brain state that we need to be in to connect with Him in a meaningful way. All right, so I'm going to have Pastor Angela come on up. Give her a hand. Pastor Angela has done an amazing job here at the church leading the mental health initiative for our women. She's been running support groups, and you guys have been hosting events and those types of things, and it's been absolutely wonderful. And I just thank you for the work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Pastor Sean. That means a lot coming from you. My goodness. Well, I'm excited to
come
host you.
Come on up. Yeah, come up and have a seat.
Q&A here. Thank you. I just wanted to remind you guys really quick before we jump in that you can send your questions in, and you can do that. We'll put it up on the screen. You just text the word question to 612-712-7212. And I just encourage you, like, if you don't even know where to begin, like, maybe start with something Pastor Sean said that sparked a question for you. Or maybe within your own life, you have some questions, something, with your children, something at work, whatever it may be that maybe you are experiencing, and that you have questions about, because even if Pastor Sean didn't talk about it, he told me this earlier. I know he feels this way, that he's open to answering any questions you have. So I just encourage you guys to send those in, and I have a few to start us off with, if that's
Perfect.
okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, and then I'll just keep checking my phone to see texts that come in, you guys. So if I look like I'm on my phone, I'm not ignoring Pastor Sean. I'm just looking for your next questions, okay? Okay, Pastor Sean, going to the topic of phones.
Okay.
And children who are like very focused on their phones, right? Which is pretty normal. How, as a parent, how can I help my child who's very focused on their phone buy into the idea that we need healthy margins within phone use?
Okay.
And then how do I implement that with my child?
Okay. So a couple things that are important to consider here is, and I don't assume they mentioned the age of the child.
No.
So I'll just kind of talk about both. The way children's brains respond to parenting and correction changes based on the developmental phase that they're in. So when the children are it's about puberty. And so that there's a range of where that hits. But before puberty, there's very concrete black and white kind of no because I said no. It's actually sometimes damaging to give kids too many options. At that age, they're in their formative years and they don't have the necessary development to make big decisions around like social media and gaming and those kind of things. We get to start teaching them about how to like pick their clothes out and the kind of games that they want to play. And so it's not that they don't have decision-making ability, but we want to be aware of, what's their capacity to actually assess what they're deciding and how that's going to impact their life. So under the age of 12, whenever puberty starts, it can be more concrete. It can be, no because we're saying no. And when the child is, resisting that, we know that permissive parenting, we have a lot of research on this. Permissive parenting actually increases the likelihood of mental health issues. Children thrive in structure and rules. Their brains need it. They thrive in it. They will not thank you for this until they're 25. I promise you. But they need it. So under the age of 12, that's one more. Once they start going through puberty, the brain, that prefrontal cortex starts to develop and they have capacity for abstract thought. This is where we want to start getting into more of the no, because it's not good for you. These are some of the things that are dangerous. One of the things, there's a book out there called Anxious Generation that's really challenging a lot of our conventional ideas around social media and the use of it. And he makes such a good point. He goes, we are overprotecting our children in the areas that we shouldn't be, which is allowing them to go to the parks, go to the store on their own. Like the ability to kind of be, the king of their world for 5 minutes is really important for a child and their development and those kind of things. So we overprotect them in those areas and we underprotect them in the areas of social media where online predators are, the addictions are at, and those kind of things. So we want to start having those conversations age appropriate. As children start to move into the age of 14 and 15, the formation years have pretty much happened, okay? It doesn't mean that there can't be some correction there, and sorry, I know this is not a favorable answer. Sometimes I gotta tell parents, buckle up till they're 18. Like, this is kind of it, right? So we gotta, it's what hills do we die on? There's kind of a negotiation that goes back and forth. In those age ranges, thinking of yourself more as a coach, right? So you're getting an opportunity to kind of show them how to manage some of the things that they're going to be experiencing when they're older. Because if you take it away altogether, they're just going to go crazy when they turn 18 and move out of your house, right? So we want to be able to teach them how to use that and how to work with it in ways that has consequences that we enforce. The other thing is with the strong-willed child, they're going to have to learn this lesson one way or the other. As a kid, it's a lot less expensive for them than it is when they're an adult. When they're an adult, they just go to jail, right? So it's easier to deal with that when they're younger, but you're going to have to deal with it at some point.
Wow. Well, wow. There was a lot right there alone, was it not? Kind of on the same topic, Pastor Sean, we've got a lot of questions kind of surrounding the social media topic and screen time. A couple of questions came in, is it better to like kind of cold turkey cut off social media, or would you suggest like weaning oneself off of social media? What's most effective?
Yeah. Okay. So this is for the person themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, some of this is opinion driven. We have research indicating there's problems out there. We've got, 15 years of research. We don't have 40 years of research. So we don't necessarily know if some of the brain issues that come up are going to be reversible later. We don't necessarily know some of the best strategies to go about implementing some of the changes that need to happen. So some of this is just my opinion. And my opinion is informed from when I was going through my own addictions. Also, when I've helped other people go through addictions, anytime that dopamine system is being manipulated, so the more you abuse that system, there's a go circuit and there's a stop circuit. And when you hammer on that stop circuit over and over and you keep pushing past when you're supposed to stop, like normally your brain goes, hey, you've had enough chocolate cake, stop eating it. When you keep pushing through that and you keep abusing it, you wear that stop circuit down. So then it's all you have is go. It's just go, go, go. The consequences no longer matter. When you're in that state, we call it the hijacked brain. So you're no longer making decisions with the part of the brain that's responsible for judgment, morality, empathy, those kind of things. You're making that from a more primitive survival state because your brain thinks it needs it for survival. In those cases, management isn't typically helpful. And I say typically because there are some harm reduction models out there that do have some things to say about this. I personally come from, if it's not good for you and you're deciding to cut it out and deal with it, because ripping the Band-Aid off fast is going to be better than ripping it off slower. And usually by the time you realize it's going to be a problem, management is no longer an option.
So kind of along this line, what are your thoughts on, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, but cutting off on social media with no explanation when it is a source of stress for you?
Yeah.
We were just talking obviously about the idea of cutting off cold turkey versus is it better to wean off? How about the explanation part and the pressure that we get from society to have to explain ourselves all the time?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a personal preference. I won't do it just because I'm stubborn, and like if you're expecting me to do it, I'm just not going to. There's people analyzing that right now, but that's okay. I think there can be ways, and I guess I want to qualify a little bit my answer before this, because I think there's times where it's just like a detox is necessary. It's just like, hey, I just need a week or two off, maybe a month off, and then I can kind of go back to it. If somebody is going to try to manage, what I would encourage you to do is create environmentally safe ways to do that. So if somebody's struggling with pornography, we'll tell them, get rid of your smartphones, have your computers out in the living room, and have that be the place where you access the internet. So it might be like, I'm not gonna have social media on my cell phone. I'm gonna put it on like the home computer, which requires me to actually sit down and like go on the computer, and maybe you can put some time frames around that, and that could be kind of helpful. But it's going to be personal preference on that. I think there is etiquette. I don't know what it is. I think you're supposed to like tell people like, hey, gonna take a break.
Sure.
And I'm halfway joking about that, but one of the things we would work with our clients on is I said, you need to understand that when you give people your cell phone number or when you engage in social media, you're giving them 24-hour access to your life. You're giving them 24-hour access to your life. And even if we're not on social media, if you're sleeping with your phone beside your bed and that text messaging is going off or the emails are going off, your brain is still in that beta state. That's why we get those phantom text messages. It's actually programmed and rewired our brain to anticipate a message coming in. And so you think you heard a vibration in your purse or you think you felt it in your pocket and you pull it out and look at it. So a lot of times I'll tell people, don't even have the cell phones in your bedroom if that's what it's doing. So just personal preference.
Got it. Thank you. So it kind of changes the subject a little bit, still along the lines of your message. What advice or guidance would you give to someone who wants to develop the deep prayer and meditation brainwaves?
To start doing it.
Just start.
Start doing it. It's, with everything, the Lord's very clear. He says, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. we often don't find a lot of motivation and reward for anything when we first start doing it. When you first start going to the gym, like that's a step of faith. Like who likes doing that, right? Like you're not seeing progress, you're not losing weight, but you keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more you get into it. I believe that faith is the same way. The more we develop that muscle, the more we want to use it, the more we lean in, the more it becomes part of our life. And so just start. You know, when I first started seeking the Lord, I would just open the Bible and I would say, I don't even know what I'm looking at in here. Whatever you want me to see, just tell me. And I would just prioritize it. I loved playing guitar at that point. And so I would say, before I do anything else in the morning, I'm going to pick my Bible up and I'm just going to read from that first. And sometimes it was like for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but it just developed a discipline of priority in me, and it started to come to life and it started to have a heartbeat, and I was able to get into that flow and that presence and really experience it. So yeah, just start.
Love that. I love how you worded that, like developing that rhythm in your life. It kind of is, you have to put priority on it, and then it becomes the priority, and you just have to start somewhere. That's encouraging. Thank you, Pastor Sean. So diving into the topic of sleep, which you addressed, how do you know if you're getting enough REM sleep each night? And what can you do to help make sure you have it every night?
Yeah, good question. So there's no way to actually know other than noticing how you're feeling in the morning. If you're getting ample sleep, like as far as like time wise goes, but you're still feeling really exhausted, it's not always that. There could be some medical issues that are going on. You know, I encourage you to see a doctor for that. But it can be an indication that you're not getting good REM sleep. I don't always encourage people to do it, but the smartwatches, the Apple Watches, they'll tell you the Fitbits. You can put those on Do Not Disturb, which also is a great strategy. My wife started doing that. She said it's really been helpful for her, just throughout the day, not to put that on. So that's one way to do it. Sleep studies can tell you if there's any kind of concerns for sleep apnea. As far as how to promote good, what we call sleep hygiene, not having technology in your bedroom is the first thing. And so not having the cell phones in the bedroom, that's another thing that I've been trying to do recently, which is like when I get home, like putting the phone away and just being present and being there with my wife. So not having the technology, not engaging in brain stimulating activities such as screen time for like a half hour before you go to bed can be really helpful. And then even engaging in that deep states of prayer and meditation before going to sleep. Deep rhythmic breathing can be helpful. Sometimes putting on white noise, ambient noise in the background, so like storms or wind blowing or those kind of things can also be really helpful.
Yeah. Love that. We actually had another question come in about like if you have recommendations of sleep apps that you would recommend, or do you think that those work well?
Yeah, I do. So there's an app called Soul Time, which is Christian focused. Abide is also an app that's helpful. Some of these are paid apps. I like the Calm app. Calm app is not a Christian specific focus, but there's nothing that's true that doesn't belong to God. There's just people that acknowledge it and people that don't. So, because all truth is of God, so the things that work. And so there's some helpful, even like midday stretching activities there, some mindfulness, just kind of being able to take 10 minutes and relax. I do think that those can be very helpful. Wellness Revelation, is that right? Revelation Wellness. Okay. When I said it wrong. It's Elise Keaton. I love her platform. So she'll do 3 things. She has something called Revving the Word, which is where she's playing like workout music in the background, and she's using like Tabata style counting, and she's speaking the word of God, but she'll be like, whatever you're doing right now, if you're vacuuming, go faster. And then she'll do that for like 30 seconds, and then she'll say, okay, slow down. If you're walking, go faster. And so she's giving you kind of this workout rhythm. She also has like it's a Facebook Live type. It's like a 45-minute informational thing about like psychology, Christianity, spiritual health, and how good that is. And then there's a third component called Be Still and Be Loved. And she does like 20-minute like deep meditation. Like she'll be like lay on the floor. You'll lay on the floor. You'll be like, oh, this is amazing. Why don't I do this more often? it's playing very soothing music, and she'll focus on like a specific scripture, and she starts speaking that, but she's also bringing in some psychology as to why that's happening and talking you through that. And I absolutely love her stuff.
Love that.
Yeah.
My goodness, that sounds amazing. So just knowing we only have a few minutes left here.
Yeah.
Kind of addressing, kind of going to another topic you spoke about. You talked about the statistic of teen girls that are experiencing anxiety.
Yeah.
So on that note of that statistic, how can I help my teen who experiences anxiety and be the most effective support?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think being present is really important, and this, it's not good or bad. We live in a society that requires us to work full jobs. It's requiring both parents to be working. The amount of time and energy that it takes to function in Western culture today really comes at the cost of being able to spend a lot of time with our kids. And so as much time as you can put into that is really helpful. Reassuring them of how God sees them and comforting them. When it comes to soothing anxiety, a lot of times parents will want to go right into like reasoning with them. And what's happening is when that anxiety is coming up, it's called flooding. They're in a state of fight or flight. The sky is red and nobody's gonna tell them any differently. So when we try to reason with them, we're using intellectual logic, they're using emotional logic. This happens with parents and kids, this happens within couples, and it's like you guys are speaking like English, but you're talking different languages. So you're trying to reason with somebody and they're so dysregulated, they can't hear anything, and it's just making it worse. So a lot of times with parents, it's going up to them, it's validating the emotion, challenging the behavior. I get it that you're angry. I understand anger. I feel anger too sometimes. We can't throw things, right? It's going up and gently putting your hand on their back and saying, it's really hard feeling anxious, isn't it? Right? And you're communicating to them what's happening for them emotionally. You're not trying to resolve the conflict between them and their brother at that point. You're not trying to work through why their grades aren't better. You're just going, hey, I see you. You're emotionally struggling right now. I'll be here with you through that. And you help regulate them through your own breathing. Those mirror neurons we talked about, when I'm in session and I get highly conflicted couples, which sometimes I do, and they start to argue and they start to go at each other, unless there's a safety issue. If there's a safety issue, I'll stand up. It's happened one time in my career and I said, wait, we're not doing this. You need to step outside. But the rest of the time, I come to here. I find this place and I say, look at me. I said, time out. Look at me. And I'll get them to look at me instead of each other. And I'll start talking to them like this. And I'll say, I see you're upset right now, right? And so I'm regulating them by my presence. I'm using my voice. I'm using my rhythms to help bring them down. So with your kids, you can use that. Get down on their level. Get on one knee. Look them in the eye. Talk slowly. Help them regulate. And then you can come back in a half hour and go, okay, now we need to talk about what happened. What was going on for you? And you're going to find it an amazing thing. They have the ability to do it at that point.
Wow. So the question was kind of specifically about like teens, but would you say that this is relevant for anybody that is experiencing anxiety in your environment?
Yeah, and I think I do. I think being able to meet that emotional need first and then being able to work through that is important. Yeah. With teens, it's a difficult thing. Be involved in your kids' lives. Know who their friends are. Yeah. Know the messages that they're getting. Be willing to say no because you care about them. Talk to them, and if it persists and it seems like it's getting worse and it's really starting to have negative impacts on their lives, reach out to a professional. Get them in with a Christian counselor, get them in with a therapist that you trust, get them in to see a pastor who's got some training in this area, get them connected to resources.
Love that.
Actually, let me give a couple more quickly on, because this one I think is impacting so many teens. There's some just natural things to be focusing on. The exercise thing I talked about, helping them with breakfast. One of the things is a lot of people skip breakfast. Your brain is the farthest away from nutrition it's been when you first wake up. Your brain needs glucose to function, and in the absence of natural nutrition, it's going to produce stress hormones to get you through the day. So eating breakfast in the morning is actually a great antidote to anxiety. And so helping them to do that, making sure they're taking their breaks, those kind of things can be helpful.
That's really good. This question came in that was also kind of along the lines of teenagers and parenting teenagers. How to cope with my teenagers that tend to push back when talking about visiting church?
It depends. It depends on the age. Again, younger, we really want to develop those habits during the formation years. You know, with parenting, you just have to decide what areas you're going to dig your heels in on. Because when the kids start to fight and push back and argue, they're actually solidifying belief systems. They're actually kind of digging into that. And so there's an aspect of living Christ-like. There's an aspect of loving on them, speaking it, praying over them. That's the most important thing as a parent, is you have spiritual authority over your children. You need to use that. You need to be praying for them. I'm alive because my mom prayed for me kneeling next to her bed for 16 years. It's the only reason I'm here. It's the only reason I'm here. So if you drag them in kicking and screaming, that can sometimes work, and sometimes that's called for. It can also have adverse effects at times as well. So that's kind of a difficult question. Sure. Is contextual. I think it depends. But maybe trying to find even a church that they would enjoy going to and allowing them to develop a relationship with Jesus that they connect to, rather than trying to get them to connect to your relationship with Jesus.
That is a really good point. That last point especially, that's really good. Do you want to just go through one more question, or how do you feel right now?
Yeah, let's do one more,
okay.
And then we'll go ahead and close out.
How do I support my young adult who feels lonely and longs for solid friendship?
Oh.
Yeah.
Getting them plugged in, coming to the events, show up at church, getting involved with the different support groups, helping them meet new people. I don't think that the online, I don't think it delivers what it promises when it comes to those social medias and those types of things. I think it's real human interaction that's going to help them thrive. So I would get them in places where people are at and people are hanging out, and different groups that they can join and be a part of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really good.
All right.
Really good. Thank you, Pastor Sean.
Well, thank you, Pastor Angela, for coming up and helping out. Yeah.
Of course. And thank you guys. Of course. It was my pleasure. And I realized we did not get to every question. There was a lot of questions that came in for you, Pastor Sean. And just thank you so much for sending your questions in. And each of you, they just so matter. They matter to us. And so we just want to thank you for giving your time and attention to this tonight. And Pastor Sean, thank you for taking the time to answer as many as we could tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
I hope you had such a good time at service. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much for being part of our church family today. I know that God has more for you. Like I said, get connected. Find one of those 3 ways that we talked about before service. Get connected to your community, get connected into a place to serve, and get connected in the Global Church Planting Initiative. God bless you. Have an amazing week. We'll see you soon.